So next week, like millions of people are going to sit on their couches, look at a calendar, and experience this sudden, violent spike in cortisol.
Oh, absolutely. A massive, very real physiological shift.
Right. And it's not because they're physically in danger, and it's not because their fundamental life circumstances have, changed in any meaningful way.
No, not at all.
It's literally because a date printed on a piece of paper, backed by what is essentially a multi-billion-dollar atmospheric marketing campaign, has implicitly told them that they are failing at life.
That's a great way to put it. It's an atmospheric campaign.
Yeah, I mean, the streetlights change, the ambient music in the grocery store shifts to something with sleigh bells, and suddenly this very specific, almost universal feeling of anxiety creeps in.
And it hits people incredibly hard.
It really does. It's the realization that you are navigating the holiday season without a romantic partner, and society is making very sure that you notice. So that's our mission for this deep dive today. We're getting into the psychology of spending Christmas alone.
It's a remarkable psychological phenomenon, actually, because what we are really looking at isn't a sudden onset of genuine loneliness.
Wait, it's not.
Well, no, it's rather an environmental hijacking of our evolutionary biology. Human beings are, we're hardwired to seek safety in the tribe.
Right, the whole safety in numbers thing.
Exactly, especially during the darkest, coldest months of the year. Historically, isolation in winter literally meant death.
Oh, wow. So it's like a primal survival instinct kicking in.
Precisely. And today, the modern city kind of weaponizes that primal fear. It wraps itself in an atmosphere that explicitly celebrates couples and tight-knit families.
So if you're single, you're structurally excluded from that visual.
Right. If you don't fit perfectly into one of those neat prepackaged demographic boxes, the environment signals to your nervous system that you are being left out in the cold.
Which triggers the cortisol.
Exactly. You experience a sudden, sharp restlessness that feels deeply personal, but it's actually highly engineered by your surroundings.
Okay, let's unpack this because that changes the whole premise of our deep dive.
Yeah.
If the anxiety isn't necessarily a reflection of my actual life satisfaction on, say, November 15th,
Which it usually isn't.
right? If it's just a reaction to the environmental architecture shifting around me, we have to separate that societal pressure cooker from our actual internal desires.
We absolutely do. We need to look at the mechanisms of vulnerability here, because the environment creates a completely false sense of urgency.
Al's urgency, I like that.
You didn't wake up on a random Tuesday in October needing a soulmate, right?
Right, you were perfectly fine going to work and making dinner.
Exactly. But you woke up in December in an environment demanding that you fall in line with a specific atmospheric narrative.
The holiday narrative.
Right. And when society conditions us to view being single as a systemic defect, like it's a blank space on a seasonal checklist, the mind just panics.
Just trying to fix the defect.
Exactly. It rushes to fill the void. And this triggers a profound psychological pivot that the source material goes into in great detail.
Oh, you mean the pivot from wanting love to wanting a credential?
Exactly that. The goal abruptly shifts away from experiencing the actual joy and vulnerability of romance.
Which is what a relationship is supposed to be about, right?
Right. But it becomes entirely about acquiring the status of having a partner. You are no longer looking for human connection.
You're looking for a shield.
Yes. You are looking for social security. You just want the credential to present to the tribe.
It's like cramming for a test just to get a passing grade, completely bypassing the actual goal of learning the material.
That is a perfect analogy.
I mean, you aren't looking for a partner with whom you can share your thoughts and build a life. You're looking for a seasonal accessory.
A seasonal accessory. That's exactly how the behavior manifests.
You're just looking for someone to match the holiday decor so you don't stand out as the odd one out at the office party. And if you think about the psychological toll of treating another human being as a human shield against holiday marketing,
It's devastating.
it really is.
It is deeply corrosive to both people involved. Treating a partner as a status symbol completely hollows out the foundation of human connection.
Because you aren't seeing them as a person.
Right. You're instrumentalizing another person to manage your own social anxiety. And the fascinating part, or really the tragic part, depending on how you look at it, is how adept the human brain is at tricking itself.
Tricking itself into what? Thinking it's real.
Yes. Tricking itself into believing this manufactured panic is actually real love.
Oh, wow, so you actually convince yourself you're falling for this person.
You do. Your amygdala is firing, your heart beats faster, you feel this desperate yearning, and because of the cultural conditioning surrounding the holidays, your conscious mind misinterprets that biological panic as a profound romantic longing.
Right, your brain is searching for a narrative to explain the cortisol spike.
Exactly. It needs a reason for the physical symptoms.
And the holiday commercials provide the script right there on the TV. You are sad because you don't have someone to buy diamonds for.
That's the exact script.
So, if this anxiety isn't a true desire for love, if we are essentially just experiencing an allergic reaction to our environment, where is this pressure actually originating?
Well, we have to look back.
Because a string of LED lights on a pine tree shouldn't logically have the power to make a successful adult question their entire life's worth.
No, it logically shouldn't. But to understand the origin, we have to look at the architecture of social comparison.
Okay, let's get into that.
This isn't something that happens overnight. The urge to measure our self-worth against a socially prescribed timeline is a habit built through decades of conditioning.
Decades. Like going back to childhood.
Exactly. If you look at the developmental psychology of it, this conditioning begins in early childhood. The schoolyard is essentially the training ground for the adult holiday market.
Oh, man. You mean the endless chorus of, do you have a boyfriend? Who are you taking to the spring dance?
Yes, exactly that dynamic.
We are trained from the time we are, like, 7 years old, to view relationship status as the primary metric of social success.
You nailed it. From a very young age, we are systematically trained to link our personal value to our proximity to romance.
It's always the first question relatives ask at Thanksgiving, too.
Right. Those casual questions from classmates or relatives, they slowly build an internal rubric. You learn that having a partner equals winning the social game.
And being single equals a deficit. You're losing.
Exactly. So when the holidays approach, which is essentially the Super Bowl of romantic expectations, all of that latent childhood conditioning flares up at once.
And then, of course, we hand everyone a smartphone that supercharges that comparison on a global scale.
Oh, absolutely. Social media is a massive catalyst here.
It operates as, like, asymmetrical warfare on our self-esteem. You're sitting on your couch, you open your phone, and you're immediately bombarded with friends posting their highly curated, perfectly lit holiday plans.
The highlight reel.
Yeah. The matching pajamas, the ice skating, the extravagant dinners. It's overwhelming.
Which brings us to social comparison theory, initially proposed by Leon Festinger in the 1950s.
Okay, break that down for us.
The theory posits that individuals determine their own social and personal worth based on how they stack up against others.
So we are biologically programmed to compare ourselves.
We are. The act of comparison itself is a biologically necessary heuristic. It's how early humans oriented themselves within the hierarchy of the tribe.
So the comparison isn't the problem.
No, the danger isn't the comparison itself. The danger is the cognitive distortion that follows it. We don't just observe a difference, we attach a moral failing to it.
Oh, I see. We make it mean something about our value.
Exactly. We fall into an inferiority complex. The thought isn't just, they are at a party and I am reading a book.
Which is just a neutral observation of facts.
Right. But the thought mutates into, they are at a party, which means they are valuable, and I am reading a book, which means I am a genetic dead end.
Wow. It's the leap from observation to condemnation.
Yes, self-condemnation.
And what makes it so insidious is that the audience doing the condemning doesn't even exist. I mean, this is the concept of the imaginary gaze from the source text.
Sure. That's a crucial concept, yes.
The idea that the misery of being alone on Christmas Eve doesn't actually come from the physical reality of sitting by yourself.
Precisely. The physical reality is entirely neutral. You are an organism occupying space in a room.
Just a person on a couch.
Right. The suffering is entirely generated by the meaning you project onto that physical reality. We feel miserable because we imagine that the broader society is actively judging us for being alone.
We construct an internalized panopticon. We build a prison for ourselves.
We really do. It's related to the spotlight effect. We assume everyone is paying far more attention to our relationship status than they actually are.
We imagine our peers, our families, and, like, our exes all staring at us through the walls, silently condemning us for not having plans.
Even though they're all busy with their own lives.
Right. We act as our own judge, jury, and executioner.
And this imagined audience is invariably far harsher and more sadistic than any real person in our lives.
That is so true. We are so mean to ourselves.
Think about it. If you told a friend you were spending the night alone, they would likely say, "Ah, sounds relaxing. Enjoy the rest."
Yeah, they wouldn't care at all.
But the imaginary gaze says, "You are unlovable and you will die alone."
Okay, I have to push back here because intellectually, I completely agree with you. I know there isn't a literal jury in my living room judging my frozen pizza.
Right. Logically, you know that.
I understand the spotlight effect,
Yeah.
but knowing the psychological term doesn't stop the visceral physiological reaction.
No, it doesn't just turn it off.
When you are scrolling through social media alone on a major holiday, the pain doesn't feel imaginary. It feels like a physical weight on your chest.
It's a very real physical sensation.
It feels like the entire world is inside a warm, glowing room, and you were explicitly locked out in the cold. So how do you practically combat a feeling that is that deeply rooted in our biology?
It's a crucial point, and we cannot dismiss the biological reality of that pain. When you feel ostracized, the brain processes that social rejection using the exact same neural pathways it uses to process physical pain.
Wait, really? The exact same pathways?
Yes, your anterior cingulate cortex is lighting up on an fMRI, just like it would if you broke your leg.
That is wild.
So the pain is absolutely real, even if the premise that everyone is judging you is completely false.
Okay, so if the pain is real, what's the move?
To combat this, you cannot simply tell yourself, don't compare. That goes against our hardware.
Right, you can't just fight human nature.
Instead, you must hack the comparison mechanism by changing the target. You have to shift the comparison from horizontal to vertical.
Okay, what does that mean in practice? Meaning, instead of looking sideways at what my peers are doing on Instagram,
You look backward at your own timeline.
ah, I compare myself to me.
Yes. The only psychologically sustainable comparison is with the person you were yesterday or last year.
So asking myself, have I grown?
Exactly. Have you developed deeper resilience? Have you clarified your boundaries?
So it's an internal metric.
Right. By forcing the brain to compare your present self to your past self, you satisfy that biological urge to evaluate your status.
Oh, that's clever. You give the brain what it wants.
But you strip the imaginary gaze of its ammunition. You dismiss the imaginary jury because they are no longer the benchmark for your success.
Taking distance from that external, imagined judgment is really the only way to transform solitude from a heavy, oppressive state into something light and manageable.
It is. It's a required mental shift.
But to do that effectively, we have to redefine the vocabulary we use in our own heads.
Yeah.
Because if we manage to quiet that imaginary jury, it forces us to look objectively at what it actually means to be alone.
And that's where people get very confused.
Right. Are we really as isolated as our amygdala is telling us? Or are we simply experiencing a transient moment of solitude? There's a massive structural difference there.
Absolutely massive. The source material brings up a brilliant linguistic distinction from the Japanese language that highlights the psychological divide perfectly.
Here's where it gets really interesting, folks. Unpack this for us.
Well, they have two distinct words for being alone. The first is kadoku, which translates roughly to loneliness or, more accurately, solitude.
Solitude. Okay.
And the second is karitsu, which translates to isolation.
Kudoku and Karitsu.
Yes. And the conflation of these two concepts in our minds, treating them like they are the exact same thing, is the root cause of immense unnecessary suffering during the holidays.
So break down the mechanics of those two states, because they definitely sound like synonyms to a lot of English speakers, but psychologically, they represent entirely different ecosystems of human experience.
They really do. So let's start with karitsu isolation. This is a structural crisis.
A structural crisis, meaning it's systemic to your life.
Exactly. It is a state of genuine suffering. It means existing without any human connections, without safety nets, feeling completely and systemically severed from the social fabric.
It means you don't have anyone to call in an emergency. It's a void in your life architecture.
Precisely. It is a chronic, dangerous lack of connection. Now, Kudoku solitude, on the other hand, is simply the factual, neutral state of spending time by yourself.
It's just a coordinate in time and space.
Yes, you are the only person in the room on a Tuesday evening. That's it.
No drama attached to it.
Right. It carries no inherent moral weight, and it certainly does not imply a systemic failure of your social life.
So if we look at this practically, think about your own life. Imagine you have a highly functional network. You have friends you text daily, family you trust, colleagues you genuinely enjoy grabbing lunch with.
A very healthy social ecosystem.
Right. But just due to the random chaos of scheduling or flight delays or whatever, you happen to be spending the night of December 25th entirely by yourself.
Which happens to millions of people.
It does. The reality is you're absolutely not isolated. You are not experiencing Karitsu.
No, you were experiencing Kadoku. Solitude.
But because of the societal pressure and the media messaging surrounding that specific date.
You might sit on your couch and catastrophize.
Exactly. You feel utterly abandoned by the universe.
Yeah.
You mislabel the situation.
You take the neutral, transient fact of solitude for one evening and slap the terrifying structural label of total life isolation onto it.
Which is a massive cognitive distortion.
Yeah.
I mean, if you were listening right now, ask yourself, just because your calendar is empty for one heavily marketed Tuesday in December, does that suddenly erase the group chat you were active in yesterday?
Of course it doesn't.
Does it delete the family members you're going to see next week? Does it negate the coworker who covered your shift last month? It doesn't.
No, it changes absolutely nothing about your structural support system, and this is why language dictates reality.
How so?
The moment we accurately label our emotional and physical state, the neurological panic subsides. Realizing you are just solo for the night, rather than abandoned by the tribe, acts as an immediate pressure release valve for the nervous system.
You literally calm your body down by using the right word.
Yes, it stops you from backing yourself into a mental corner. You are just a person in a room on a Tuesday. The date on the calendar does not retroactively rewrite the reality of your existing social network.
It's incredibly empowering to realize that the cage is unlocked.
It's a huge relief.
But the danger is what happens when we don't realize it, when we allow that cognitive distortion to take the wheel.
Because that leads to action, usually bad action.
Right, because when we feel structurally isolated, when we think we are in Keiretsu, that panic drives us to take drastic, often incredibly damaging actions to fix a problem that doesn't actually exist.
We try to solve a temporary feeling of solitude with permanent, reckless decisions.
And this is where we see the phenomenon of the deadline relationship that the source material warns about.
Yes, the deadline relationship. This is when the internal psychological anxiety bleeds out into tangible, real-world consequences.
It stops being just in your head.
Exactly. When you are driven by the panic of wanting to avoid being alone on a specific holiday, you completely lose your natural pacing.
You bypass the prefrontal cortex-like, the logical, critical thinking part of your brain, because the amygdala is just screaming that you need to secure a partner to survive the winter.
Precisely. A healthy relationship requires time. It requires a slow accumulation of data to build trust, to understand compatibility, to observe how someone handles stress over time.
You can't rush data collection.
No, you can't. But when you set a strict external timeline, say a deadline of finding someone before December 24th, it fundamentally alters your evaluation criteria.
Because you're out of time.
Right. Your primary goal shifts from finding a compatible partner to simply finding a partner. Any partner.
It's exactly like panic buying a house because you need a place to live by the weekend.
I love this analogy. Let's explore that.
Okay, so you walk into an open house, and because your deadline is breathing down your neck, you don't look at the foundation. You don't get an inspector to check the plumbing.
You don't have the time to care.
Right. You ignore the massive water stains on the ceiling. You just look at the realtor and say, does it have a roof? Great, I'll take a 30-year mortgage.
You're just trying to secure the structure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And sure, you have a roof over your head for that one weekend. You met your deadline. You aren't technically homeless for the holiday.
But what happens next?
By January, the pipes burst, the foundation sinks, and you are spending the rest of the year doing emotional drywall repair, trapped in a structure you actually hate.
That is the perfect analogy for what psychologists call fake happiness.
Fake happiness. That sounds so bleak.
It is bleak. When you build a relationship on the shaky foundation of seasonal panic, it offers only a superficial, artificial comfort.
It's a temporary relief born from conforming to societal expectations, not from internal joy or genuine interpersonal connection.
You achieve the status credential we discussed earlier, but you lack the actual substance. You are relieved that you aren't alone, but you aren't actually happy that you are with them.
Wow. Relieved you aren't alone, but not happy you are with them. That is a brutal reality check.
It's the reality for a lot of couples who rush things in November and December.
And I imagine the crash from that artificial high is incredibly fast.
Oh, it is entirely predictable. In the psychological community, it's often related to the post-event fade.
The post-event fade.
Right. Once the seasonal event passes, once the environmental architecture changes back, the Christmas tree comes down, and the ambient music returns to normal in January, the relationship rapidly loses its color.
Because the catalyst is gone.
Exactly. The artificial urgency that acted as the glue holding you together vanishes. If the primary reason you got together was avoiding the imaginary gaze on a holiday, the actual mundane reality of spending a Tuesday in January with this person becomes incredibly hollow.
Because there is no underlying foundation.
Yeah.
You look across the breakfast table at this person and realize you don't actually know them, you don't share their values, and worse, you don't really even want to.
You just didn't want to be alone in December.
Yeah, you were just dodging a feeling.
And this brings us to a profound irony regarding human fulfillment that the text touches on.
What's the irony?
True fulfillment comes from the qualitative content of a relationship, not the mere fact of its existence. A hollow relationship where you are sitting next to someone you don't connect with can actually generate a much deeper sense of isolation than sitting in a room by yourself.
Oh man, feeling alone while sitting right next to someone.
Yes. The presence of another physical body does not cure loneliness if the emotional connection is entirely artificial. It only highlights the absence of true intimacy. It makes the karitsu, the isolation, feel even worse.
So if rushing into a deadline relationship is clearly a trap, if panic buying a partner only leads to the post-event fade in a miserable January, how do we actively rebel against this?
We have to change our behavior in social settings.
Right. How do we step back from this societal pressure cooker and actually utilize our solitude without feeling like we are losing some invisible social competition?
To do that, we have to recognize and dismantle the modern mechanisms of tribal status signaling.
Tribal status signaling.
Okay.
And one of the most prevalent is the concept the text calls the report battle.
The report battle. I love this term. It sounds like something out of a corporate boardroom, but it's actually happening in every group chat right now.
We have all participated in it, whether we realize it or not.
Tell us how it works.
It is the phenomenon where friends, colleagues, or family members report their holiday plans and relationship milestones to each other.
Like, I'm going to this exclusive restaurant, or we booked a cabin in the mountains, or he surprised me with these tickets.
Exactly. On the surface, it masquerades as innocent catching up.
Just sharing life updates.
Right. But psychologically, it subtly, almost inevitably, mutates into a competitive atmosphere. It becomes a battle of who has the most socially validated, picturesque, cinematic holiday experience.
It's the conspicuous consumption of romance. It's flexing.
It is a total flex. And if your report is, I'm staying home making a frozen pizza and rewatching a sitcom, you feel like you've brought a knife to a gunfight. You feel a deep sense of shame. And not because you don't want the pizza.
You might really want the pizza.
I usually do. But you feel shame because your report doesn't hold any currency in that specific social economy.
Exactly. The currency in the report battle is social validation. And the most radical, empowering solution to this is to actively choose not to participate in the economy at all.
Just refuse to play.
Step away from the who went where with whom discussions entirely.
You just opt out.
Opting out is not a defeat. It is a profound act of asserting your true self. By refusing to engage in the report battle, you are declaring that your time possesses intrinsic value.
Its worth is not determined by how impressive it sounds to a peer group.
Right. Or how many likes it can generate on a feed. You are forcibly untangling your self-worth from the approval of the imaginary gaze.
That makes so much sense. But let's add some friction to this, because there's an accelerator pedal to this anxiety, isn't there?
There usually is. What are you thinking of?
It's not just the holidays. It's the compounding factor of age. The imaginary gaze gets significantly heavier the older we get, because the societal timeline narrows.
Age anxiety. Yes, the Texan brings this up.
The questions in the report battle shift from, do you have a partner, to why are you still single at your age? Or, aren't you worried time is running out?
It becomes much more aggressive.
It does. How do you opt out when society is telling you your biological or social clock is expiring?
Age anxiety is essentially the ultimate deadline panic. As we age, the societal panopticon focuses its lens more sharply.
It zooms right in on you.
But we have to return to the core truth we established earlier. Age is a numerical marker of time passed on Earth.
It's just math.
It is not a dictator of when your internal psychological readiness for a partnership must peak. The societal timeline is an average, a statistical construct.
It's not a biological mandate for my personal happiness?
Exactly. Decisions made with deep inner conviction, regardless of your age, will always yield a higher quality of life than decisions made because you felt rushed by an arbitrary societal clock.
So rushing at 35 is just as bad as rushing at 22?
Rushing a relationship at 35 because you feel behind will result in the exact same fake happiness and post-event fade as rushing one at 22 for a holiday party. The mechanics of the failure are identical.
So if we look at where we are now,
Yeah.
we've unmasked the illusion. We understand the mechanisms of the imaginary gaze. We know the difference between solitude and structural isolation. And we've officially opted out of the report battle.
We've cleared the board.
What does this actually look like in practice? It's the evening of December 24th. You are sitting in your living room alone. You aren't scrolling. You aren't catastrophizing. What do you actually do with that time?
You utilize that vacuum to build your core identity.
Building identity in a vacuum. I like the sound of that.
Less time spent performing for others means more bandwidth to actually face yourself. When you aren't busy trying to anticipate a partner's needs or worrying about how a peer group will evaluate your choices, you have the incredibly rare opportunity to engage with yourself purely for your own joy.
Which sounds simple, like maybe even a little cliche, but it is actually deeply profound.
It is very difficult for modern people to do.
I mean, it means listening to an entire album from start to finish without worrying if the other person likes the music.
Yes.
It means cooking a meal exactly how you like it with the spices you want without compromising because someone else thinks it's too spicy.
It is the practice of identity formation. Engaging in these solitary activities without the background noise of external evaluation helps solidify who you actually are.
You're finding your own baseline.
You're learning your own preferences, divorced from the influence of a partner, a crowd, or a marketing campaign.
Because solo time isn't just a waiting room.
No, not at all.
It isn't just killing time until a socially validated partner arrives to start your real life. It is the active construction of the foundation for your life as a whole.
It's the most important work you can do.
If you know exactly who you are, if you know what you value, and if you are completely comfortable sitting in a room with your own unfiltered thoughts, you become incredibly resilient.
You become bulletproof in a way.
You won't lose yourself when you finally do meet someone. You won't morph into whatever they need you to be because your foundation is solid.
You realize you don't have to desperately fill every silent moment on your schedule with noise just to prove you exist.
That's the ultimate goal, isn't it?
It is. And there is a mechanism for achieving that resilience that borrows heavily from mindfulness and exposure therapy.
Oh, exposure therapy, like facing a phobia.
Exactly like that. If you find yourself sitting quietly on a night with no plans and that familiar primal anxiety starts to rise up in your chest.
The cortisol spike.
Right. Instead of trying to forcefully erase it by calling an ex you don't even like.
We've all been there.
Or mindlessly scrolling social media to numb the brain, or turning on the television to drown it out. You just sit with it.
You let the monster in the room.
You let it in and you observe it. You acknowledge the biological response. You say to yourself, I am feeling a spike in cortisol right now. I am feeling a bit lonely.
Just labeling it objectively.
Yes, simply observing the feeling without trying to aggressively medicate it or fix it strips the emotion of its power.
Because you realize it can't kill you.
Exactly. You realize that the feeling of loneliness cannot actually harm you. It is just an emotion passing through your nervous system. By sitting with it, you build emotional tolerance.
It loses its teeth when you stop fighting it. You realize it's just a shadow on the wall.
Precisely. You transform the experience. You move from a mindset of, I am suffering from a tragic lack of connection to, I am experiencing the richness of my own unedited company.
That is a fundamental paradigm shift.
It changes everything. You go from viewing solitude as a deficit to viewing it as an active, chosen, and deeply necessary state of being.
That is a wildly powerful reframing. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to pull the camera all the way back.
Sure, let's look at the big picture.
We started by looking at that sudden heavy anxiety that hits when the holiday marketing gears up. And what we've uncovered is that this anxiety is not a personal failing. It is a completely predictable biological response to massive external pressures and societal conditioning.
We've explored how the holiday rush is a synthetic environment designed to weaponize our need for belonging.
We've dismantled the imaginary gaze, that internal jury that convicts us of crimes we haven't committed.
We've clarified the vital structural difference between the transient neutrality of solitude, kudoku, and the systemic crisis of isolation, guritsu.
And we've seen how panic buying a relationship to meet a societal deadline only guarantees future misery. The whole post-event fade.
Exactly.
So if you are listening to this right now, understand this. You do not need to force yourself to avoid being alone. You do not need to panic buy a relationship just to have a prop sitting across from you at dinner.
You really don't.
And you do not need to artificially fill the silence of a quiet night just to prove to an imaginary audience that you have worth. Solitude is not a punishment for failing at romance. It is a perfectly valid, incredibly rich opportunity to build your own identity.
If there is one concept to take away from our exploration today, it is this. We spend so much of our finite energy worrying that being alone on a holiday means we are missing out on connecting with someone
We
else.
exhaust ourselves worrying about it.
But if we rush into a hollow relationship or scramble to fill our schedule just to satisfy the imaginary gaze, we are actively betraying ourselves.
Like self-betrayal.
Refusing to panic by a partner isn't a failure. It is an act of quiet rebellion against a consumerist calendar that tries to dictate our emotional worth.
By refusing to play the game, you win. The most critical connection you will ever forge is the one you have with yourself in an empty room. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a great conversation.
As the calendar turns and the pressure mounts, we challenge you to use your next quiet evening, not as a trigger